Imagine LeBron James, the king of basketball, turning into a liability in a playoff game because of something you've never even noticed. Or Stephen Curry, the greatest shooter in NBA history, suddenly going 0 for 10 from distance in a stretch that decides an entire series. These aren't just off nights. They're clues to hidden soft spots, invisible cracks, even in the greatest players alive. Every legend, every superstar carries a weakness so strange, so counterintuitive, that most fans never realize it's there. A flaw buried deep beneath their greatness. One that explains those rare moments when the impossible suddenly looks human. Today we're uncovering every NBA player with the weirdest weaknesses you never noticed. Not the obvious stuff like bad defense or poor free throw shooting, but flaws so peculiar, so against type, that they change how you see the game forever. Because when you learn to see them, you realize something. Greatness in the NBA is never flawless. It's always built on fragile foundations, where even one overlooked weakness can rewrite history. Stay with me. Because by the end you'll see your favorite players differently, and maybe you'll start spotting the same patterns in every superstar who's ever fallen short. We think we know how to measure greatness. Field goal percentage. True shooting. Win shares. We've built entire religions out of numbers. But here's the catch. Statistics are blunt tools. They capture outcomes, not causes. They can't tell you why a player fails, or what subtle flaw keeps haunting them in high-pressure moments. Hidden weaknesses don't always show up on stat sheets. They live in the spaces between, in the habits, the micro-decisions, the mental patterns that analytics can't yet decode. And that's why the weird weaknesses stay hidden. They're the blind spots behind the brilliance. Think about it. Wilt Chamberlain, the most physically dominant player in basketball history, crippled by free throws. A man who could score 100 points in a game, but couldn't reliably hit a 15-foot shot with no one guarding him. That's not just a quirk. That's a paradox, one that haunted him for his entire career. But Wilt wasn't unique. Every era of basketball is full of players whose greatness hid something quietly bizarre, a strange flaw that defined their ceiling. And to understand how those flaws form, we have to go back to the beginning. Weird weaknesses don't come from lack of skill. They're born from overcompensation. When you're exceptional at one thing, you often neglect another, because you never need it. A 7-footer who dominates the paint? He doesn't bother with mid-range jumpers. A guard who can dribble past anyone? He never practices moving without the ball. Strength creates blindness. Dominance creates fragility. That's how weird weaknesses begin, not from failure but from comfort. Then comes psychology. Pressure doesn't just expose mechanical flaws, it amplifies mental ones. The fear of missing. The fear of being the reason your team loses. Some players tighten up in big moments not because they're unskilled but because they care too much. Others crumble because they're built on repetition, and pressure breaks rhythm. Finally, there's the factor no one controls. Time. The game evolves. Rules change. Defenses adapt. A player built for one era wakes up in another, and suddenly, what made him special now makes him outdated. Every weird weakness begins as an adaptation to the past. Let's start with a classic, Wilt Chamberlain. He enters the league as a force of nature, towering, unstoppable, rewriting record books. But from the start, there's a secret vulnerability: free throws. His career average? Around 50%. At first, it doesn't matter. He scores at will. He rebounds like a machine. But as the stakes rise, opponents find a pressure point. They foul him. Over and over. They make him earn points from the one spot he hates most, the free throw line. And suddenly, the invincible becomes human. He tries everything, new routines, underhand techniques, different grips, but nothing sticks. The flaw isn't mechanical anymore. It's psychological. He knows he'll miss, and that knowing becomes the problem itself. Wilt's story is the perfect symbol of how greatness hides its weakness. He could dominate physics but not his own mind. Now look at Tim Duncan, the big fundamental. So reliable, so efficient, so composed that he almost looked robotic. But even Duncan had a weakness, and it was the same one: free throws. Throughout his career, he hovered below 70%. For most players, that's fine. But for a superstar who always found himself at the line late in tight games, it mattered. Yet here's the strange part: Duncan never fixed it, and it never ruined him. What? Because his game didn't rely on flash or high scoring, it relied on control. His weakness existed, but it didn't define him. In a way, Duncan represents the opposite of Wilt. A man who accepted his limits so completely that they lost power over him. Then comes Shaquille O'Neal, another giant haunted by the same ghost. The hack-a-Shaq strategy was designed entirely around exploiting that one flaw. Imagine being so dominant that teams choose to foul you on purpose because they know it's statistically better than defending you. Shaq called it embarrassing. He worked with shooting coaches, practiced relentlessly, but under the bright lights the muscle memory failed. The moment the crowd fell silent, his hands betrayed him. Like Wilt, Shaq's weakness wasn't just physical, it was symbolic. It reminded the world that even gods bleed. But weird weaknesses aren't limited to big men. Guards and forwards have their own strange vulnerabilities. Take Russell Westbrook. A tornado of energy, explosive beyond comprehension. But beneath that fury lies a strange fragility, decision-making under control. The faster he goes, the less efficient he becomes. In his prime he was unstoppable in chaos, but in structured, slow half-court sets, his aggression turned to recklessness. As the league shifted toward spacing and efficiency, his greatest strength, relentless speed, became a weird weakness. The game changed faster than he could. Or James Harden. A genius scorer, manipulator of defenders, master of drawing fouls. But when the postseason comes and referees swallow the whistle, his magic fades. His weird weakness? Dependence on the system itself. Remove the conditions that empower him, and the empire crumbles. Then Giannis Antetokounmpo. Built like a myth, unstoppable in transition, yet sometimes powerless at the three-point line. When defenses wall him off and force him to shoot, the unstoppable slows down. His weird weakness? Geometry. The closer he is to the rim, the more godlike he becomes. The farther he gets, the more mortal. Even Stephen Curry, the face of modern shooting, has an invisible vulnerability. He's a rhythm shooter. Take away his rhythm, switch defenses, trap early, deny space, and the greatest shooter alive can suddenly go cold. His weird weakness? He's human. He needs flow, confidence, movement. Disrupt that and even he feels it. Here's what happens when weird weaknesses meet the real world. They don't just cause losses. They shape legacies. When opponents find the soft spot, they don't stop attacking it. They poke it, game after game, until it defines you. That's what happened to Wilt, to Shaq, to Westbrook, to Harden. The pattern is always the same. Dominance creates predictability, predictability reveals vulnerability. And once your weakness becomes part of the scouting report, it's nearly impossible to erase. Teams plan around it. Fans remember it. History records it. The tragedy is that most players do try to fix their flaws. They hire specialists, change mechanics, shift routines. But the weird weaknesses, the deep ones, aren't always fixable. Because they aren't just physical habits. They're neurological grooves. Psychological ruts. They're part of the player's identity. To fix them completely would mean becoming someone else, and that's not something even the best athletes can always do. Over time, weird weaknesses reshape perception. Wilt's legacy is forever shadowed by free throws. Shaq's dominance comes with an asterisk. Harden's brilliance is questioned every May. Westbrook's passion becomes a punchline. Even when they win, the story of their flaw lingers. It becomes part of how we remember them, proof that perfection in sports is an illusion. But there's also something strangely beautiful about that. Because weakness, in a way, makes greatness human. It gives balance to the myth. It reminds us that dominance and fragility are twins. You can't have one without the other. In today's NBA, weird weaknesses still define champions. Take Nikola Jokic. A savant on offense, vision like a point guard in a center's body. But his defense. Sometimes slow on rotations, exploitable in space. His weird weakness isn't laziness, it's physics. His body simply can't react as fast as the guards he switches onto. Or Jason Tatum. An elite scorer who sometimes disappears in the clutch. The weird weakness? Decision paralysis. When the defense traps him, he hesitates just long enough to lose rhythm. Not fear but overcalculation. Luka Doncic too. Unreal talent, surgical offense, but conditioning often fades late in games. His weird weakness? Endurance disguised as pace control. He plays slow because it hides fatigue, and when that rhythm breaks, his efficiency plummets. Even LeBron James, the modern icon of completeness, has an odd weak spot. In the rare times his jumper goes cold, he hesitates to drive in fear of late-game free throws, the one thing that's never been elite in his arsenal. For LeBron, the weird weakness has always been trust. Trust in the shot, trust in the line, trust in the moment. Patterns repeat. Every generation believes it solved the old flaws, until the next twist of the game exposes new ones. If you look closely, the numbers whisper the same truth. In clutch playoff games, the final 5 minutes with a score margin under 5, many stars see their free throw percentages dip by several points. Some guards, who shoot 40% from 3 in the regular season, drop to the mid-20s under playoff pressure. The difference isn't mechanics, it's psychology. Road splits show another pattern. Certain stars shoot dramatically worse outside their home arenas, where crowd rhythm and sightlines change. The weird weakness in this case is comfort dependency. Even professionals are creatures of routine. Then there's fatigue. After back-to-back games, turnover rates climb, shooting form changes, reaction time slows by fractions of seconds. Fractions that decide championships. The deeper you go into the data, the clearer it becomes. Every player has a breaking point, and the weirdest weaknesses are simply where that breaking point hides. So what can we learn from all of this? Even legends carry invisible fragility. Their greatness isn't the absence of weakness, it's their ability to win despite it. Weaknesses become weapons for opponents. Every hidden flaw eventually becomes a target. The NBA isn't just a league of athletes, it's a league of scientists dissecting human limits. Awareness is power. You can't always erase a weird weakness, but you can prepare for it, design around it, and keep it from defining you. The players who endure longest are those who make peace with their imperfections. And here's the warning. The weird weakness is always evolving. As the league becomes more data-driven, no flaw will stay hidden forever. AI scouting, biometric tracking, shot analytics, soon every subtle hesitation, every fatigue pattern, every misread rotation will be visible. So the question becomes, when the game exposes every weakness, what happens to the mystery that makes greatness human? Will future players be perfect, or just perfectly predictable? Maybe that's what keeps basketball beautiful. Because for every unstoppable force, there's always a strange, quiet flaw, a reminder that even gods of the game are still made of flesh and fear. Perfection isn't what makes them great. Their resilience does. Their refusal to let those hidden weaknesses define their story. And maybe that's the real lesson for all of us. Greatness doesn't mean you don't have flaws. It means your flaws never stop you from showing up when it matters.